Hey everyone, in this video, we're going to talk about networking as a physical therapist and some of the strategies that you can use to effectively build a network. Let's dive right in. So networking as a physical therapist, I'm going to start with a story about something that happened personally to me and where networking really played a massive role in my career and helping me enhance my career. During the pandemic, I was working at a facility and looking to, continue to move up the ranks. I had worked as a sports physical therapist for about 8 years at that point, and I've been going and getting invited to more and more sports team interviews, but coming in just a little bit short each time. And then the pandemic hit, and there was a hiring freeze. There wasn't really opportunity there. And I thought about, what else could I do during this time? And there wasn't conferences going on. There wasn't really anything going on. So I thought, okay, I've been talking to the same couple people over the last few years. I need something new. I need some new perspectives. I want to kind of meet some additional people. There's some people I've wanted to reach out to for a while now. So I thought, maybe I'll start interviewing some people on I guess like a mini video podcast, which was poorly done at that time, but it was during the pandemic. And I thought, okay, yeah, maybe I'll use the student physical therapist as our platform and the reach we have with our big email list and membership to, start to entice people to maybe come on and give them some shout out and just kind of get their story out there, because I think there's a lot of really, really good sports physical therapists out there that really don't have a platform, but might want one, especially during this time. So I started setting up interviews with more and more physical therapists that I respected and that I was interested in hearing from. Got to talk to them before and after the interviews and really just kind of get to know them as a person. And then we exchanged information and just continued to talk throughout the year. And one of those interviews actually led me a year later to my current role, which is the director of Iowa Sports Therapy, because that person had an introduction or gave me an introduction to Ross Nakaji, who you'll see right here in the center of the photo, who was looking to hire for that role, which was an incredible role. And that's just one example of just how things can kind of happen from just doing just basic networking, which we're going to dive into what networking is, why you should do it, some of the benefits, some of the strategies, and just other considerations today so that you can understand, how do you get started and how do you make it effective? And this is just my personal opinion. But I think that over the last decade plus of being a physical therapist, I have some things to offer for that. So why network, right? There's so many different reasons why you should network, but I think, one of the probably the best reasons to network is you never know when you're going to want another career change, job opportunity, et cetera, right? And I think my example is a perfect example. I was looking for something, even more sports oriented. I was kind of failing at that top level of trying to get into pro sport. But I think that, the more people that just in the field, and especially in your niche or niche, whatever you want to call it, the better. Because when you're looking to maybe get a new job, the first thing you're typically going to do is you're going to start to reach out to those people that you're very close with to say, hey, do you know of anybody in my field that is hiring right now? Or you're going to see a job posting and you're going to say, I know somebody in my network knows that person. And there's always, a few degrees of separation between people, especially in our field of physical therapy or just sports medicine in general, orthopedic, whether you're an athletic trainer, physical therapist, massage therapist, whatever. There's always only a few degrees of freedom between everybody and or separation. And that's usually how you start to get these jobs, right? It's who you know and who knows you, right? You've heard that before, but that's why you want to expand your network as much as possible and really kind of nourish those networks, right? Because you never know when you're going to want those jobs. So that's one reason why you should network. Another reason is you want to learn something new, whether it's clinically, business-wise, professional development-wise, personal development-wise, whatever it may be. You want to have a large network in all those areas that you're interested in. Early on, maybe it's clinically, right? I remember early on, I would be going to conferences to, speak to the speakers that I respected, that I would follow online or follow through the research or follow through book publications. I'm kind of dating myself here, but that was kind of what we did then, right? And that really helped expand my knowledge base, which was what I was most interested in clinically early on in my career. And then over time, it kind of shifted toward business and clinical and professional development. And then I got a stagnant period. So, it opened my eyes up. Hey, I need to get a new network. The network that I've been nourishing for a while is great, but there's other things I want to do as well. So to learn something new, to be able to bounce ideas off of, to be able to talk to those people at conferences, at events, things like that, or even just over text, over phone, to kind of have almost a mentor sometimes. That's how you get those things set up, right? So that's another reason to network. To talk shop, kind of along the lines, right? Maybe you just want to talk shop sometimes, something different from the colleagues that you're with on a day-to-day basis. Or if you meet somebody at a conference, now you know somebody you can talk to in the room, right? There's been plenty of times I've been at conferences, I'm like, I don't really know anybody here, and I would love to talk to somebody, but I don't even know what to say. Well, I just want to talk shop sometimes too. And guess what? Other physical therapists want to as well, especially if they're like-minded individuals. And that's what you're searching for. You're looking for like-minded individuals that you can connect with. Another reason to network, enhance your career opportunities. Maybe it goes beyond the job part or the talking shop or to learning something new. Maybe you have people now in your network that are speakers and you're like, I want to speak. How do you do that, right? What are the steps you take? Because there's not a manual for this stuff a lot of times. Or research maybe, or maybe jobs, maybe consulting, maybe they want to give you a patient referral because they know you now. You've talked so many times, or maybe you want to give them a patient referral that you have somebody that's moving away to an area that another good physical therapist is, and you want to do right by the patient. So there's so many different things that you can do when you're networking, right? And when you have a big network. And then lastly, to improve your strategies and open your mind. I think that's really important. The more people you speak to, just like when you go to conferences, the reason you go to conferences is not because you can't look that stuff up online. It's because you want to open your mind up. You want to have, a stimulus again. And I think it's really important that if you continuously network and you nourish those relationships, you'll figure out new strategies to any problems you have. You'll probably open your mind up to things that weren't on your mind before, and you're like, wow, I would have never thought that. So these are some of the reasons why I think it's so important to network. Now let's talk about where to network, right? We talked about some of the benefits of networking and some of the things why you should network constantly, but where should you network? Well, there's anywhere basically is the answer, right? But there's online spaces, right? You have your Instagrams, your Facebook groups, all that stuff, right? So Facebook has tons of groups, right? Tons of groups, student groups, chapters, local communities. And those are great because that's how you get information a lot of times too about what's going on within a local community, nationally, regionally, whatever it may be. And that's how you can connect again to like-minded individuals by commenting on things, asking questions, and you might be able to, start a relationship with somebody and really be able to talk to them more. Instagram as well. I know that's a popular form as well now. People are constantly on it. They're looking at people's stories. You can respond to things if you're inquiring about things. You can send messages to people if you want to talk with them. That's just seems to be easier these days. You can post and repost things, which is again another form of networking, because now if you're reposting someone else's content, maybe you're doing that as a way to support them because you want to support them. You really like their stuff, right? So now you're reposting that. Well, guess what? Now they're recognizing those things as well. And they're like, okay, who is this person that's helping me for no reason, right? Other than they must like my stuff. And that's a strategy, right? And I know we're not talking about strategy right now, but that's a strategy to network as well, because whether you're commenting, whether you're reposting, whatever it may be, those are ways that you can help somebody else. And that is also what networking is. It's helping other people without expecting something in return always too. If you're expecting something in return each time, you're going to be unhappy first and foremost, because that's just not going to happen. And secondly, you're going in with the wrong intention, right? You wouldn't do that if you went into a job and was like, okay, I'm going to work with this patient, but I'm looking to get something out of it from this patient. No, you're there to help them. So Instagram, Facebook groups, if you're an APTA member, special interest groups are growing, right? Those are another ways to find like-minded individuals. If you're interested in that route, that's a good route because they have different forums now as well, and different events, webinars, things like that. And those are easy ways to reach out because you're part of a community. Conferences, right? Those are huge. Those are probably the easiest ones that come to mind. But again, remember at conferences, some of these these national ones are big, right? Like CSM. So it's a little difficult if you don't have a strategy going in. We're going to talk about that next, but you need to have a strategy on how to approach people at conferences. Community, right? So again, this means your initial community near you, right? Your local community, right? Let's say that you live in Southern California, you live in Irvine, like where my clinic is, right? Talking to PTs, strength coaches, athletic trainers, everybody near you in that area that's in your niche. So that's another strategy, right? Reaching out to people that are close by so you can meet them for coffee, talk to them on the phone, things like that. And then lastly, email, right? Email's still not dead. And I still think email is a strong way to meet somebody that you haven't met before. Again, strategy wise is important then, right? You gotta understand that follow-up is important, and open rate, depending on how big their email is, it might be a 5%, 10%, return rate of who's actually responding back to you. And that might not be because they don't want to respond to you. It might be because they're busy. So again, just consider these things when you're looking at where or how to network. So what should you consider, right? And what are strategies that you want to think about here? All right. So you see this picture on the left here, right? It's this is at CSM in 2022. My boss Ross Nakaji is across from me, but I don't know anybody else at that table. And this is a perfect form of what networking could be, right? This is simply just, we're going out to dinner and we're just having conversations, right? Some of it's to do with PT, some of it has to do with life, right? And that's how you get to meet people. It's the same way you make friends, the same way you date, all that above, right? That's what you should be thinking about when you're networking, right? It's not about what you can get from somebody. It's more about getting to know somebody as a person, right? And if you understand them as people and you're kind of vibing with that person, now you can have a conversation. And now it's not just transactional. And I think that's really important to understand with networking, and from a strategy standpoint. You just want to get to know them as a person first, right? Just have conversations. It'll happen organically then, right? Some type of conversation will happen organically around the topic you want, or sometimes it is okay to ask those questions, but also just to have conversations too. So there's a strategy on both sides, right? If you're approaching someone that's going to be a quick thing and you have a question, that's one way. You can follow up later via different forms, emails, messages, things like that, thanking them. And then, in these type of settings, right, you're just having conversations, and it'll just happen organically. One other strategy you should probably really consider is, once you do start to meet people, think about ways that you can help them, right? Not what you can get out of it, because if you have a contact for them or this or that, like, that's the whole point of networking. That's the whole point of, creating relationships with people is seeing what you can do to help them. And I think that will ultimately yield more, because you'll meet people that way too. You connected a friend with somebody new, or a new person with a friend. Both people benefited there. Yeah, I guess you didn't benefit, but you did because you helped somebody. And those people remember that later on, and maybe you're top of mind then when something else pops up that makes sense for you. So, just understand that helping people is probably the best strategy you're going to have in networking, because if you do that and you add value to them, there's going to be a time where they're probably going to have to add value back to you, because it's just going to come up organically. I keep a close list of contacts, right? And just see, hey, how do I nurture these people? How do I help them? And just start looking at that like every quarter, right? So 4 times a year. You could do it more for sure, but definitely at least every quarter, look at it and be like, who do I want to reach out to? Who's new? Who do I have a good relationship with that I haven't chatted with in a while? Who should I reach out to? If you don't make that list, a lot of times things are forgotten. And then remember to follow up, right? I mentioned this earlier, but follow-up is really important. You meet someone for the first time, follow up with them. Not just once, but twice or 3 times. Obviously not right in a row, but use that time to follow up, because now you're going to be sunk into somebody's mind as well. And then you're going to actually really build a good relationship with somebody. Once is usually not enough. It does happen, but it's not usually often, right? I mean, think about dating, think about friendships. You meet somebody once, you kind of get along, you go out with them once. It doesn't mean it's going to stick forever. That's why you got to nurture these things and nurture relationships, and try to help people constantly. Look at it every quarter. And then lastly, just create an omnipresence, right? And that could be your online presence. That could be publications, whatever it may be, people around those people that you want to get in contact with is really important too, right? Let's say there's somebody that you want to get in contact with, but you've already established a relationship around those other people and you're having conversations, they're going to automatically bring you up organically. It's going to come up in conversation, and then it's an easier introduction. Like, oh, hey, it's great to meet you. You're talking with somebody. I've actually been wanting to chat with you for a while. I'm really close with Kurt. I know you worked with him in the past at your previous job. He said to say hello, by the way. I told him I was going to run into you here. Now it's an organic conversation. Now you have something to talk about as well, right? So these are things to consider and strategies to take when you're meeting people or when you want to meet people. And then lastly, some of these other considerations, right? When you're networking with people, there's going to be people in different various spots, right? Some are going to be new grads, some are going to be students, some are going to be clinicians out for 30 plus years, right in the middle, same age as you, whatever it may be. Understand that there's nobody beneath you, right? And there's nobody above you either. Everybody should be treated 100% the same because you were once in one of those shoes as you ascend through your career. So, and I think it's also really important to understand that, because that person that you have a conversation with today might be in a really, really important position one day, and you might want to apply for a job that they're at, or they know somebody that knows somebody. So just, you never know what trajectory every person's going to take. And you might think there's no chance that person's going to be in X, Y, and Z spot, and then they end up in X, Y, and Z spot. You don't know what you don't know. So consider that when you're networking, and try to be as nice to everybody as possible. Take away all good conversations, and understand that it might end up coming back, either good or bad, depending on how you treat people. Having fun is the most important, right? I think that's the biggest thing. Don't think of networking as a job, right? You think of it as just relationship building, right? Friendships, just like dating, just like building friendships. Like I brought that up a couple times, but it's really the truth. You're just having conversations. I remember early on in my career, I was button up shirt, meeting people from pro teams. They just want to go out and have like some food and coffee and stuff, and they want to have conversations. I was way too professional early on in my career, and that wasn't me anyways. I wanted to be professional, but like that wasn't what people want to be around. They want to be around people that, want to have fun, or just have a conversation, or, you can laugh with, right? If you do that first, everything else takes care of itself. And then lastly, here's a really good tip. People remember stories, okay? You're more likely to remember a lecture or a story, or a lecture if they have a story involved in it, right? Whether it's a patient case, whether it's a funny story, whatever it may be. People like to hear stories. They don't want to be just lectured to. They don't want to just have conversations. They will, but if you have stories, you're going to have a much better conversation. They're going to be triggered by something. They're going to remember you. People remember stories. Okay, so just consider that when you're having relationships with people and building those relationships and networking, because you're going to stick in their top of mind. They're going to remember, oh, that's the guy that had that story, right? I've gone to conferences now, and Ross has given stories about me tons of times, right? Things that we've done together, things that have happened that nobody else would know, but now it was a good, something good happened, and he wanted to share it with other people. They remember that now. Now they remember that about me, and I didn't even tell the story. All right. But I could tell that, right? I could tell that story. I could tell something about Ross. I could tell something about my colleague, Matt. I could tell something about myself. There are stories out there everywhere, and people respond to those. So these are some considerations to think about as well. I hope that was really helpful with networking. Again, this is something that's common early on. People want to learn, how do I network? So take some of those strategies and really just think about what the first 2 or 3 steps should be, whether it's, hey, I'm attending a conference next week. Hey, I just need to get a little bit more active online, or, hey, I need to start, growing my forums, my communities, my local communities, and just start reaching out. Just start reaching out to people. Remember, not everyone's going to hit, but build relationships organically, and it'll happen.